what I'm excited about in India right now is, I will not go into the stats on the numbers, but the exciting growth which is happening in India in terms of internet users. And what's more challenging, why we have an exciting panel today here, is because the majority of the growth will be in regional content, people who have regional loyalties. And we've experimented a lot at Ixigo in that space as well, because what's happening, if you see around, internet user base is growing. Thanks to Jio, everybody's consuming, video at a lower price rate as well. So we've invested a lot in creating content. To me, it was a no-brainer that content is a way to go. But I'm really excited and I have different perspectives from everybody on the panel. So I want to start with a video, an experiment which we're doing with Indian languages at Ixigo. And if you could just play the video.
সত্যি কি করছো? ফাটাফাটি ফাটাফাটি। আমি? তুমি? মেয়ে? ছেলে? মাথা খারাপ? সর্বনাশ সর্বনাশ। তোমার নাম কি? কোথায় যাচ্ছ? কম্পেয়ার করুন, বুক করুন তাড়াতাড়ি। ঘন্টা ঘন্টা। গন্ডগোল? ক্ষমা করো। ঠিক আছে, বাজে কথা। বাঁ দিকে, ডান দিকে। প্রেমে হাবুডুবু হাবুডুবু। পিএনপিসি, পরনিন্দা পরচর্চা। শুনতে পারছো? ধন্যবাদ।
As marketers, we're always shooting in the dark. जहाँ से आवाज आती, we keep all the artillery there. So we're doing Bengali, Punjabi, Gujarati, Kanpuri, Lucknow. A lot of videos like this. So let me jump right into it. I'll ask the first question to Vani about how are the brands addressing this regional content challenge? And since this will be the big growth for the next phase, and of course you've had a lot of experience with that as well. So what's your opinion on how are you addressing this challenge? Because it's not English, Hindi anymore.
So before I come to that, actually, there's something very interesting that I feel must be said, which is that we've evolved from an era of mass communication to mass communicators. What started to happen now is from an era where communication was essentially one way, and we as marketers disseminated information in the form of advertising to consumers. Today, consumers are as much marketers themselves, because with access to smartphones, and a lot of you are on phones right now, I can see, everybody is talking to everybody all the time. As a result, our role as marketers becomes more to moderate the discussion with consumers rather than seed in messages as a one-way exercise. And so it is more crucial than ever for brands to be really authentic. Because if brands are not authentic, consumers don't want to believe you. And more so because there's so much information that they're dealing with that you alone are not the provider of information. They'd rather believe their friends, and they'd believe their peers, and they believe other sources of authority versus an advertiser who they see as someone who has a vested interest, and that applies for celebrities who are endorsing brands as well. So in this what should I say, mission, or in this need for brands to be authentic, I think the context of today's discussion, which is vernacular, or how do you tap into the next billion, becomes very, very critical. There's an article in Wall Street Journal very recently which talks about the next billion. And the next billion is not going to come from text, it's going to come from voice. Because vernacular is where the large masses are. And today there is a very, very, very large segment of population that is getting the best out of the internet, but not doing so via text. Because not all of them are literate, and not all of them have the ability to type, but they do have the ability to talk into the phone. So there's this example of a railway coolie who he's checking, he's a coolie, which means he's earning less than 1,000 rupees a day. And he's checking train schedules, he's messaging, he's even downloading movies on his smartphone because he can talk into it. So I think the challenge for us marketers really is how do we leverage, how do we create an authentic conversation, or how do we moderate an authentic conversation in this context where consumers are sitting in areas.
Absolutely. And I'll
where
come back to the ads
English
part.
isn't
This is
relevant.
ads versus content debate, which I'm waiting to have, for that to start. But I want to ask Alokdeep a question about the Titan, because you've had, a lot of presence in urban as well as tier 2 now. So, and you've experimented with the regional advertising as well. You've given me an example of Sridevi doing. So, what's your perspective on how you're dealing with this thing as well?
So, since this is it's a digital event, I'll kind of keep it very contextual to the digital flavor that we are in. So, as a company, of course, Titan doesn't need introduction. We have so many brands across so many target audiences. So, I'll speak in context of some of our most well-known brands like Tanishq, Titan, Sonata. Now, as a company, besides reaching out to audiences through regional ads, not just translated ads, but specifically, I would say, advertisements that are in regional languages with regional heroes and film stars. The example that I was giving him was of a Tamil ad that Sridevi did for Tanishq a couple of years back, to the most recent campaign of Tanishq, which was about wedding, which had different communities and different perspectives, not looking at, I would say, the vernacular part of it, but the fact that these are our Indian languages. So English, yes, is the language that I am speaking in, all of us are speaking in this event, but the fact is the digital explosion that is going to happen, as what Google and KPMG believes and a lot of us believes, is that is going to be on the Indian language front. For that level, it is for us and specific to digital and commerce today, we're building besides just communication, reach into these particular areas and cities. Today, as a channel that I manage for the company e-commerce, we reach on to 18,000 pin codes, which is just probably behind an Amazon or a Flipkart, which at the end of the day are aggregators. So as a brand, we have reach onto 18,000 pin codes to be able to not only make communication reach there, but in terms of people who were to sort of go onto our digital sites and look at products, order those products, be able to fulfill those products on to those areas. At the same time, we are gearing up, I wouldn't say for all brands, because each brand has a different TG, especially in case of Sonata, which is a brand which has been built on rural customers for multi-language content, not only in terms of the marketing communication, something which is as detailed as product specifications being written in the local language, product specifications in terms of when a consumer looks at a watch, the features being written in a Hindi or a Tamil, Bengali, Kannada, those kind of languages, yeah.
That brings me to the question I had for Nitesh, because we were talking earlier. They said a lot of, there's a trend that you take a lot of ads and you translate them into different languages, right? But does that follow down to the product? For example, we're talking about apps and websites, for example, they're still in English or Hindi maximum, right? So what's your view on that? Because you can speak to somebody in advertising in Bangla, but then the whole thing is in Hindi, and this guy has a 4,000 ka phone, jisme 4 app hai, right? It's a very new user.
Absolutely, Ashish. So, all of us, and this is primarily because if you look at the statistics, we are the second largest English-speaking nation, right, in the world. So, for every Englishman, we have 2 Indians who speak English. But
big round of applause for that.
So, it's not an applause. I don't think we should applaud that. It's 125 million people in India who speak English, but that's only 12% of India.
Yeah.
I think we need to draw out a learning from China. There are only 10 million in China who speak English, right?
Now we can clap to that.
I think that needs an applause. But the point I'm trying to make is there's a reason that China did not allow Google to come in, and they used Baidu. Because Baidu has the local flavor, the search, like Vani was talking about. The search in India is now being built to voice.
Right.
It's largely because in India, we still think English when we try to communicate with the masses. And the masses, and that's the point you're trying to make, the masses do not understand transliterated language.
Right.
They need a language that they speak.
I know the
And-
nuances
and-
of the language as well. It's not just like blatant translation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you spin that back? I can't think of many properties on the internet which are in a local language. So if you look at the urban and rural divide, and the growth is, like Alok says, going to come from rural. First of all, I want to reclassify what is urban and rural, because rural in the old sense was about, population. It was about a village having an independent banking system, which is now changing. Today, 99% of Indian households have a bank account. Okay? Now, it's another thing that only 30% have a savings which is more than 1,000 rupees. But we'll come to that. Now, with all this happening, we need to finally enable those people to be able to transact. So what is the rural population in the old sense of the word really doing on the internet? If you look at the sequence, they're first looking at entertainment, because entertainment is not reaching them in any other form, and thanks to the mobile,
Yeah.
they're
Look at
getting
the Kan
entertained.
Khajuro network. You call and you are entertainment. In dark
Absolutely.
areas, Bluetooth to Bluetooth networks, people are sharing content.
The second priority is communication, and the third priority is social. While in the urban, the way people look at the internet,
Yeah.
it's communication first, social second, and entertainment third. Because we are exposed to entertainment.
Right.
Now, when we say communication has to lead to transactions. So for all of us as marketers, finally we need to see how do we monetize this entire speak. And that has to happen through content. So we have to think and enable our partners, be it, and I'm talking about the entire ecosystem, and let this be an opener for the entire 3 days.
Right.
Can we start thinking about, like Vani was saying yesterday, we need to probably employ linguists, right,
But,
in our
sorry,
team,
yeah,
to understand the local nuances, and then have content which can hit the consumer
Right.
at the heart.
Sorry to cut you off. I had this crazy idea, since we're talking about content. Like, we made a video, it got 10 million views in China, and that blew my mind because China, the video was not even in any local Chinese language. So the question I want to ask Sumit is this, sorry to cut you off, is that how about we drop this whole vernacular stuff and just focus on video, because that transcends that. Right? Same, maybe that could be the learning. I go back and you know what, Bangla sabko chodo, matlab all these regional languages, and just focus on creating content which is more visual, that'll go deeper and deeper. So you were giving me example about that earlier. That's pretty relevant here too.
Yeah, so video is one of the languages which I foresee could be a future language of communication, and but along with that, it has to be audio-visual,
Right.
okay? And the words, so probably one brand, or they may be present here, probably Vani will innovate a language which everybody will follow, and that will be a one common language for the masses.
Right.
If you see examples today, whether it's Instagram or Snapchat or any other audio-visual social media tools, you don't have to talk a lot, you don't have to write a lot, but people understand, and
Right.
from all walks of life, because audio-visual, through audio-visual you can express so many things, with expressions, and you may or may not have the voice there, but people understand the story which you want to show through pictorial representation and
Can I
something
just
like that.
add over here, you know, one of the things that we do in PepsiCo is for every commercial we make,
Yeah.
we always check it on mute. When the commercial is presented to us
Right.
as clients, the first thing that we do is to see if I were to play this commercial on mute, is the desired message still getting communicated? Is comprehension as intended? So that's one. And second is one of our most successful Pepsi campaigns is actually emojis, you know, to the point that you're making.
Yeah.
We built a whole campaign on...
We were talking about yesterday about
It's a
Durex and that
language.
emoji thing they did it too. I mean, that was amazing.
So, Vani, you raised a very important point, and this is again something I want to take up and throw open to the audience. So, mute and creating a visual impact in mute would be the most ideal situation. But ultimately, as a marketer, so my agenda as a marketer could be very different from yours. Yours could be more about, creating brand equity, brand affinity, and there is no direct correlation on monetization. So as a head of a company, I would always hold my teams responsible for how are you going to monetize it. So my question so the point is, if you make a video which can attract the consumer without a language, how do you finally work a programmatic path to the consumer journey on the digital medium? Because ultimately there is no such thing in the world as an image search. Everything that you're seeing has to lead into a consumer journey through meta tags or through keywords. So how are you going to be able to build engines which is going to cut across language? And that's something we all need to think from a content perspective. So it's a question to publishers, it's a question to content writers. How are they going to be able to meta tag those visuals and throw it in a programmatic way for it to lead to monetization?
Right.
Can I just add over there? It's a great point you bring up, and one of the examples that comes to my mind is a recipes campaign that we had done on Kurkure, specifically on digital. Now recipes is searched for. We know it's one of the most searched items. And what we did was, again, something that eliminated voice altogether, as in eliminated language altogether, which was the entire recipe was visually shown. It's very simple. You show chopped onions being added, and you show chopped dhania being added, and you show blah 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 blah, and it is all AV. It's very, very engaging, and that to use technology, if one can help the consumer via geo-targeting, to get the desired product. So here I am. I'm looking at this recipe, and if something were to pop up and to tell me that these packets of Kurkure that you're looking for can be bought in this store next to you, and help direct me there, then I'm on. Then we've created a direct link to a transaction as well.
That's great. I mean, we can slice and dice. That's, the audience, that's great. And we've learned that visual works. That's great. I mean, the opportunity is amazing. But the big shift I'm seeing as well, which you mentioned right in the beginning, was that ads ka game is getting over, right? Because it's becoming more two-way, right? And this time is about conversation and being relevant, then, blatant advertising and recall. So how are you addressing that? Because ad blockers are at 28%, right? And next year they'll be growing faster as well. So, and we grew up in marketing thinking advertising is, something which we need to crack. And now the game is completely changed. So and this question is open to all, yeah, please. You can take this one.
So I think we've been hearing a lot of talk about communication. I think what perhaps brands are doing today, they are communicating to Indian audiences in different languages. But if it were to go by what Nitish is saying, to really monetize it, because today, obviously, there are commercials that are created in a Tamil or a Kannada or a different language, as I was saying earlier, using a local audience.
Right.
But how do you monetize it? In terms of, so the challenge, especially that I see today, and when you're saying ad today, there are various ways and means. You can use regional websites, you can use technology to show that person that ad. but how do you expect him to react to it?
Right.
So today, I think there's a need for being able to even customize platforms. When we talk about specific to websites, we talk about mobile applications, to be able to make that individual eventually understand their product. So this report that we are referring to, one of the thoughts or one of the pieces that was mentioned is a lot of people today go to an e-commerce website, look around or they go to a digital site, they're able to see, but they're not able to take the next call to action. They're not able to move beyond a certain this thing. So that's where I would say there is a need for being able to provide assistance in the local language, or maybe even looking at things, something which we are still doing in a pilot form is an assisted e-commerce model,
Right.
which is where we have people who, I would say, travel along with our distributors to upcountry locations. They're able to show the person the catalog on the device. It's very similar to what microfinancing institutions do in correspondent banking, and are able to help that individual place the order. This thing actually will become much better if today people create, besides just ads in regional languages or communication in regional languages,
Right.
the platforms or the content that the customer has to consume.
I think there's
Has
an
to buy the
evolution of
product,
ads right now, because I mean I agree, monetization, ROI, programmatic भी हर चीज में डाल दो, that's fine, right? But like to me, like if people are spending an hour a day on Facebook, for example, they're spending a lot of time on social, on their phones, that's where a lot of branding opportunity is as well, right? To me, for example, we're doing an experiment, that's the video which you saw, the Bengali video. Everybody who saw this Bengali video was again retargeted with an ad for 10-15 seconds. This was not an ad. So I personally, don't want to monetize a content video, but I want to drive like killer number of conversations. So when that thing is still relevant in their heads, then, and the ad is straight about the product, 10 seconds. So yeah, you were saying something.
What I think, see, if we see this, what we are talking about is having the next 100 million growth. And as we were discussing earlier, that this growth is not going to come from the audience who are already transacting, who are already being touched upon. This is the new audience. So
Yeah.
I think first of all we need to invest a little bit on the on understanding the behavior of this audience, whether it's vernacular or it's a urban or rural or whosoever it is. I mean, for example, in one of the companies I worked with earlier, and that was very early stage of gaming advertising, we used to call teenager kids and kids from 8 to 12 years old and used to give them iPad, iPhones and everything, and basically ask them to just play games and figure out what they don't like and what they like when an ad is thrown up. So
Right.
we were trying to understand the consumer behavior. So, I mean, just a simple example. How many of you guys know the word shotgun means when you are traveling in a car with 4 friends?
Show of hands?
Just
Shotgun?
one, just 2 guys. What does it mean? Yeah, you're not from India, looks like. Okay, so and just see, 99.9% people don't know what does shotgun mean.
We need more millennials in the audience.
By the way, this is the most common, this is the kind of terminology people are using. When 2 guys are interested in a girl, they call dips. That means I will take the first chance.
But that's what we've learned from the American media, right?
I mean, this
Watching
is the
Friends and Seinfeld.
lingo which they are using in English, and I'm sure these are the kind of lingos which they will be using in different regional languages. So first of all, I think we need to, as a brand, we need to little bit invest in understanding these audience before reaching to the conclusion that, okay, we are going to do this and that, and then we are going to target them like this.
Okay.
That's my take on that. I mean,
That's
if
amazing. I
go,
want to ask this question. ये सब ठीक है. This is awesome, and we are right on the ball. We have insights about how to crack this. What is the role of TV now? And that's something which keeps boggling, because in my mind it's like I don't want to answer that, but what is the role of TV in your opinion?
Coming from a previous electronic background,
That's why I
would
want
say,
you to answer
I
it.
would say television still rules, okay? But television has to get combined with a methodology where
Right.
I, as a marketer, need to understand what someone's watching and therefore be able to provide meaningful content on a mobile phone, which is the 3-screen technology.
Right.
And I think there are companies like Zephyr and things like that which are working on that platform. But the point I'm driving is, where will that 100 million, what would be the strategy for that 100 million? So I think the challenge in the auto industry is the auto industry itself is grappling with a situation right now where we're not finding growth. The next growth in the auto industry is not going to come from consumers. It's going to come from aggregators. So it's 20% of our growth in the auto industry is going to come from drivers who are going to buy cars. Now, we need to speak in their local language, okay, number one. We need to be able to enable them to be able to transact in terms of payments, this, that, and the other. And I think Sumit probably could be the largest enabler for that 100 million, because even today, there are 65 million money orders that are transacted every year.
Wow.
And a money order usually takes about 2 days for the other person to get the money. And that's because these guys do not know how to use a smartphone. They do not have internet connectivity, which I think is going to happen in the next year or two, right? In terms of 100 million internet connects. But if we can have someone like a money transfer or an or a wallet, I think that 100 million is going to come in anyway. And now, as marketers, how do I engage? So how do I use that ecosystem to be able to enable those 20% of drivers to be able to buy a car that's going to be affordable to them? And to me, that is what is going to kickstart a growth for me.
So will you divert TV funds to this? That's what I'm saying.
So, I
mean, what's the relevance of TV? That's my biggest question.
For me, television
because
is...
people are spending 4 hours a week on TV and 15 hours on mobile.
To me, it's very clear, television is something that will only help me boost my sales team and my dealer network. I don't think any of the consumers are going to be watching it.
At what impact?
Like I said, the impact will be only if there is someone who wants brand affinity and brand recall combined with programmatic.
हफ्ते में 4 घंटे TV, 15 घंटे mobile. Do the math. I'm just saying, I don't understand this matrix anymore.
So television.
Can I just add to this over here? Whether it's TV or the internet, I think the rules of communication over time haven't changed.
Right.
Finally, the rules of communication for us as marketers or advertisers, we still have to touch the hearts and minds of consumers,
Right.
So, and what does that best is emotions. And emotions are free of language. Now, the role of TV is still to be able to communicate in a manner which, either elicits shock or awe or fear or humor, love. There are timeless emotions which a marketer must be able to tap into in order to build brand affinity, like you said. The only difference perhaps is in the how, So while TV is still playing to the rules of communication, the only difference is that while she's spending 4 hours on TV, she's spending 15 hours on the internet. If she is watching TV, you want to make sure that when she is then engaged on her mobile phone,
It's the same,
you
yeah.
haven't disconnected from her. So how do
Absolutely.
you make sure that that message, which I might have left behind on TV, seamlessly connects in a way that is engaging and that allows for a two-way conversation and that allows for me to be able to share my own emotions with people who matter? Then I'm in a space, then I as a brand am featuring in her mind in a relevant
And
context.
staying relevant. I want to wrap it up with one question.
I just want to complete the point I was making. So that was a point I made where companies like Sapphire are already working on that platform. But the point I'm making is television is not going to die. The advertising is going to shift from television to the entire television broadcasting platform is changing to OTT.
And
Right?
that'll evolve
So
too.
an OTT is going to be interactive.
Right.
So your entire advertising is going to shift to the OTT guys,
Right.
right? And the spend will probably diminish, but ultimately it's going to be a collective sum total of what you're spending on television plus OTT, which I think will remain the same according to me. It will be digital, which today is anyone's guess. People talking about 4,000 crores or whatever. That will still improve and go up.
Right. I mean, I want to wrap it up with one thing which, say, like I can take back when I get back to office, or you can too, is we understand the nuances, we understand the insights, the nitty-gritties, and we are experimenting a lot in different regional content and the visual, the relevance of TV, driving conversations. That's awesome. But what's that competency required in today's time, especially in India, right? Of course, you need some, new marketing skills. You need to update yourself to how users are behaving, how their behavior is changing. But in Indian context, so if you could just final words but about what the key competencies you would want in marketers and the people you're hiring, say 5 years down the line, right? If you're interviewing somebody, like what are the 2 things? What's the first thing that the guy needs to know? So we'll start with Vani and we'll complete the circle.
I mean, in this context, we talk about being world citizens. If we can start to be truly Indian citizens.
Desi swag.
Exactly, Desi swag, exactly. I was telling you about that example yesterday. We had a complaint on social about somebody talking about air and bag on Lay's. And what we did was, for the first time, we actually scrolled through this person's profile and we found that this person has a lot of communication going on with her friends in Marathi. Not in English, but in Marathi. So we replied to her within a couple of hours on her complaint in Marathi. And it so happened that, we had somebody from our team in digital who speaks Marathi. And it was a reply, not just, translated like we were earlier talking about, but in the colloquial sense, And I think that is a big unlock today,
So let me ask the audience, how many of you speak more than 2 languages? Show of hands. That's amazing. That's amazing. We are hiring. Indian languages.
Exactly, yeah.
So, Alok, we'll go to Sumit and complete the circle this way.
Yeah. So
Key competency.
Key competencies which I would like or I would prefer is people having language competencies more than 1 or 2. So of course, moving towards having linguists in your team, and also people who understand culture very well. So that is also very critical, because I am a linguist, I understand, say I can speak 6 languages, not a problem. But if I don't understand the cultural sensitivity of
it'll be a disaster in India.
It could be a disaster. I mean, it could be a great disaster. Believe me, we live in NCR, so there are 5 different cultures there, and you don't know
3 states.
Yeah, what is good and what is bad. So if you don't behave properly, then
awesome. Nitish.
So, having been a retailer, I would say, and I would second what Sumit says, I have a terminology called VALS, which is values and lifestyles. So key competency will be a linguist with a psychology background.
Interesting. Hello.
So, I manage a digital business through technologies. So for me, it would be in terms of, yes, communication is important, but being able to visualize and create a solution which takes us in context of the discussion today to the next billion that we're talking about in terms of the number of people who are who speak Indian languages, to be not only able to communicate to them, but to get them to transact, purchase, and then become brand loyalists.
And when I focus on hiring right now, the thing is, we're doing all these language videos and nobody speaks any language in the office, right? So to me, researching that and understanding the culture is very important. Getting it vetted through 100 people, sending all the emails out, talking to people, taking them for coffee, to bhai ye sahi hai ki nahi hai. And then, of course, the storytelling part, which is rooted in the user behavior, how they're changing. Attention span is not there. Everybody's stuck on their phones. So thank you very much. I think we've had an amazing panel in the morning. A big round of applause, everyone.